Well, hello Internet, and welcome to part 5 of my Visual Basic tutorial series. In this part of the tutorial series, I'm going to cover a whole bunch of different things that I missed previously. I'm going to talk about shared properties, shared methods, saving files, opening files, MessageBox, OpenFileDialog, SaveFileDialog, and the FontDialog with a whole bunch of other different things. Like always, all the code is available along with a transcript in the description underneath this video, and I have a lot to do, so let's get into it. Alright, just like previously, I have a basic form here with a text box inside of it with multi-line and scroll bars turned on, and then I have a button down here. This is set to 18 font if you wanted to know, and this is also set to 18, and this is called Button Update, and I'm going to double click on that, and here we'll be able to go in and add in different things that are going to occur whenever the update button is clicked on. What I want to do first though is come over here on the right side of the screen and right click on this guy and come down here to add, and then I'm going to come down here and click on class. Here I'm going to talk about shared properties as well as shared methods. You can see I have class selected here, and I'm just going to call this animal.vb and click on add. Then inside of this class file, I'm going to set up some different things. Alright, so what are we going to do here? Very first thing, I want to go public and name as string, and this is where I'm going to save the name for our animals that we create. And sometimes we want to be able to define properties that have the same value for every object, and these are called shared properties. So for example, let's say we wanted to keep track of the number of animal objects that are created. How we would do so is we would go public and then shared, and then we could call this num of animals and as integer, and let's give it a default starting value of 0, and let's spell integer correctly. Alright, so whenever this value changes for one object, it's going to change for every single one of them. And it's very common to have properties as shared in situations in which it would not make sense for an animal, for example, to have that attribute. So since animals can't by nature count, then likewise they would not be able to keep track of the number of animals that are created. So I'm going to come in here now and I'm going to create our constructor, and I'm going to say that it is optional that they pass in a name, and if they do not, I'm going to define the name by default as unknown. If however they do pass it in, I'm going to save that in there. And now since I created a new animal object, I also want to come in and increment or increase the value of num of animals. And I can do that like that. Alright, and each time this increases, it will increase for every single object. Now, you are going to be able to access other shared functions and shared properties with shared methods or functions, whatever you want to call them. So what we're going to do here is we are going to create a shared function. So I'm going to go public, and once again, you just throw shared inside of there, and this is a function that's going to return a value. And here what I'm going to have this do is actually, it's going to create animal objects, which is something that's very common to do. So I'm going to say that I want to make an animal, and it is going to be passed a string. Let's go and give this a default. Let's go optional. You could do that like that, and then come in here likewise and define unknown if you'd like to do that like this. And then what this is going to do is create a new animal object. So we'll go dim, we'll call this new animal as new animal with, and then we will define our name inside of here. Dot name is equal to n. And then after we do that, we can now return this new animal that was created. So we'll go animal and save that. Alright, so that's all we're going to do in animal.vb. Now I'm going to jump over into form1.vb and play around creating these guys. Alright, so we're going to first off come in here and create our text output that we're going to put inside of our text box, just like we had done before. Output, and as string, and give it a default value of nothing because that's what it should be. And then of course we do not want to forget to come in here and attach that to the text box. So we'll say text box 1 dot text is equal to whatever the final text output is. And now inside of here we can go and create an object. So I'm going to go dim, I'm going to call the object spot as new animal with and I'm going to define a name. Of course, it's going to be Spot, just as I defined there. And then I'll show you how to make an animal here in a moment as well. So to do that, I would go dim Fluffy is equal to, and this allows you to access that shared method or shared function. So I'll just call make animal like this, and then I will pass Fluffy inside of there. So that's going to work just as well. And that's very common to have classes generate objects exactly as we had done right there. So now we can come in and access the shared property that they both have. So we'll go text output to output this information on the screen. And here we'll say something like num of animals. And then to access that shared property, it's going to be the same for both Fluffy as well as Spot. You could try them both out if you'd like. And I'm going to go num of animals, and that's going to be able to access that. And I'll go and then I'll throw in a new line. And if we run that and click on update, you're going to see that num of animals comes back as 2. And that's going to be the same for every single one of those. So there's shared properties as well as shared methods, and now I'm going to show you how to go and save text to a file. Now, if you want to work with text files or saving files in general, you're going to have to come in here and import some modules here. So I'm going to go import system, and I'm also going to go imports system IO for input output. Jump down inside of here. Now what I'm going to do is create a string array with some lines of text that I want to write to my file. So I'm going to go dim and lines as string is equal to, and then I'm going to throw in some information. So I'm going to say this is some random text, and then I'll throw in another one saved to a file. Like that. And then I'm going to write those lines of text to a file. Now the very first thing I need to do is target where I want this to go, and I want this to go into my documents path. So I'm going to say my doc path as string is equal to, and then how we do that is we go environment, get folder, path, and then once again we will go environment and special folder, and then my documents. And you could target any of those other different files that come in right there. And now what I need to do is write the strings to the file. And to do that, you use using. And what using does is it acquires the system resource called StreamWriter that's going to allow us to write to the file. So I'm going to call this output file as new StreamWriter. Pass inside of here my document path. And then I'm going to say convert and to string. And then inside of here, I'm going to reference the file that I want to save this to. So that's going to be a file called random text. Now inside of here, I can just cycle through each of these lines of text up here and save them to the file. So I'm going to just go for each line as string in lines. And then to actually write the file, you go output file and then write line. And then each individual line of text, as many as you have. And if you do that, that is going to save to those files. And we'll get into actually proving that that works. But what I want to do here first is show you also how to append, which means to add on to the end of a file. And to do that, I'm going to use exactly the same file. I'm going to use using here again. And I'm going to go output file as new StreamWriter, just like we used previously. Again, just like we did before. I'm going to go my doc path and then reference the actual file that we want to write to. So to string. Once again, this is going to be random text. This guy right here. Might as well just copy it, paste that inside of there, and then I'll throw true inside of here, meaning that I want to append this. Come over here and go end using, and then to actually output the file, I'm going to go output file dot write line, and then I'll say here is more info. And now to prove that all of that actually did something, I'm going to read text out of a file. Pretty easy to do as well. Here, however, you might get an error, so we're going to use a try block. And here instead, we are going to use StreamReader to read information from a file that we defined. So I'm going to go as new StreamReader. Once again, we're going to do the same thing. My doc path and convert to string. Once again, we're going to go and target the random text file to prove that we actually pulled information out of that guy. And you have to surround that with double quotes like that. And then I'm going to create the line of text, or where I'm going to hold each individual line of text that's pulled from that. And then I'm going to cycle through and read from the stream and save that to a string. And then likewise, we'll save that to the text box. So we'll go line is equal to SR. And here I'm going to say read to end, which means I want to read the entire file and save it there as a string. And then if I do that, I can just go and throw that in my text output, and that's going to be the line. And then after that, of course, we're going to be able to throw in a new line again. Down inside of here, if an exception is raised, we can go and throw a message box that's going to say something about this being wrong. So we'll go show, and we'll say something like couldn't read file, just to keep it simple, and error, just to keep it simpler. And now we can run this and see that it worked. All right, so let's run this guy. Come over inside of here and click on update. And you can see not only did it write that information to the file, it also appended this additional information, and then it also was able to read that information from the file and display it in the text box. All right, so there we go. That is how to write information, append information, and then read information in files using Visual Basic. Now I want to jump over and talk more about what we can do with message boxes. Now, message boxes can be a lot more complicated than just displaying a simple message with a little title. There are multiple different icons you're going to be able to use. There's asterisk, error, exclamation, hand, information, question, stop, warning, and none. And also there are multiple different buttons we can use. You can see all of those right there. And you're also going to be able to set the default highlighted button just by passing in button 1, button 2, or button 3. So I'm going to go and I'm going to create a pretty complicated message box. And you're also, of course, going to be able to get the results of whatever button they clicked on. So there's a whole bunch of things I haven't covered yet. Now, to get the button they clicked on, you're going to have to go if, and then put in message box like that, and we will then call for show, of course. Just like always, you're going to have a message, so I'm just going to call this message to show, and just like previously, you're going to have a title in the top of the message box, and then you're going to be able to define the buttons that are going to be used. So I'm going to go message box and then buttons. And I can pull from that list that I just showed you on the screen. Let's use something a little bit more complicated. Let's use abort, retry, or ignore. Let's then define the icon we want to use. So I'm going to go message box icon. And I'm going to say that I want to use the exclamation mark. And then let's also define the default button that's going to be selected. So let's go and select that guy. And here I'm going to say that that's going to be button 1. Then that's going to close off, and then I'm going to go and check what the button was that they clicked on. So to do that, you're going to say equals to, and then here, to figure this out, I'm going to go System, Windows, Forms, Dialog, Result, and then abort. And if that is going to match up, then in that situation, I'm just going to output whatever they clicked on the screen. So we'll go text output. Of course, you could do pretty much anything you'd like, but we'll just say abort was clicked, and then throw in a new line. And then to keep this rather simple, I'm just going to say else, and then else. If they click on anything else, I'm going to go text output, and I'll just say something else was clicked, or whatever you'd like, and then throw in the new line. All right, that's all we need to do, and we can run that to test that it worked. And there it is. Here we'll hit update, and there you can see message to show. There is the exclamation mark. There is the title. And if I click on abort, you're going to see that abort was clicked shows up over here in the text box. All right, so there's message boxes. Now let's take a look at how we can open an OpenFileDialog box. Now I showed you previously how to go and open up a file, but it's a lot classier if you use an OpenFileDialog to get the file name that they want. So what we're going to do here is go OpenFileDialog, and I'm going to call this EX as, and then new OpenFileDialog, and then we will define some parameters for this. First, I'm going to say the type of files that I want to look for. So I'm going to say that I want text documents to show up inside of here. So we'll say txt like that, and then you need to put or and then star txt. Or I also want to show all of the other files that are showing up. So we'll go Files, and then we'll just put a star dot star. And then we'll go or and star dot star and close that off. Another thing we can do is go filter index, and this is going to select which of these we're going to use by default. I want to use all files by default, so in that situation I'm going to put 2 right there. And also you can go and put a title inside of there, and there's other things you can do, but these are the most common things you're going to do. So I'm just going to leave it at this, open important file. And now we have to come in here and figure out what file they clicked on. So we'll be able to open that file using the techniques that I showed you earlier. So here I'm going to define where the name of the file selected is going to be stored. So I'm just going to call this file selected as string. And then to find out what they got, we're going to go if OpenFileDialog ex show dialog is equal to, and then we're going to check if they clicked on the OK button. So we'll say system Windows Forms dialog result dot OK. So if they clicked on the OK button, that means they selected a file. And then we're going to try, because there's a potential for an error here, and we're going to see if we can get the file that was selected. And to do so, we're going to go open FileDialog ex once again and get the file name that was selected inside of that dialog box. And then in this situation, we're just going to throw that information on the screen. So we'll go file selected. For your homework, you can go in there and actually try to open up the file. I know you can. So here we'll go environment and throw in a new line again, just put it on the screen. And then down inside of the catch block, we can just go and throw in a message box and show, and we'll go error getting file, just to keep it simple, and then we'll just go error. And I think I got all that right, so let's test it out and see if it works. Whoops, just noticed that I forgot to actually put the file inside of there, so I'm going to go file selected. That would have been silly without that. And we'll save it and we'll run it. And we can come in here and click on update, and a open dialog is going to open up there. We can just find some random thing, click on that, and there you can see it got the file name. All right, so that guy works as well. And now we're going to take a look at the SaveFileDialog. And it is actually going to be very, very similar. So I'm not going to change that many things. I'm going to come in here and go File to Save, give it that name instead. And this is going to be SaveFileDialog. So we'll just change this from Open to Save, like that. Jump up here, change this to SaveFileDialog. There's going to be a couple other different options. Again, SaveFileDialog. We're still going to have the filter inside of it. Still going to have filter index as well as title. I, however, am also, don't forget to put the commas inside of there. That'll cause an error. I'm also going to come in and put the default extension that we want to use. So I'm going to say default extension, and I'm going to have that be text. I'm going to go in and put file name and have that be file to save, which means I'm going to have to get this guy right here and copy that out of there and throw it up here. And let's make sure that this all lines up. And let's go and throw in some nothing inside of the quotes. And then here, I'm going to define that if they try to overwrite a file that already exists, that I want an error to pop up so that they know that. So we'll say true with that. All right, so now we'll come down here and we will actually test to make sure it works. Once again, we're going to check that they clicked on the OK button. If they did, we're going to call SaveFileDialog. Check out what's going on here with FileDialog. Oh, let's also come up here and go dim, and then that's going to be file selected as string. Then that error should go away, and it does. And then we'll change this to file saved, and then we'll change this to error saving file. And I think it did everything right. Let's run it, check it out. Click on update. There is our save file, and I'm going to come down here and I'm going to go random text and save. You can see right here it warns me that I'm trying to replace it because I put that true in the overwrite, and I'm going to say yes, and it's going to jump back and give me the file name. Okay, so cool stuff. And the final thing I'm going to do is show you how to get information in regards to font changes and font color changes and a whole bunch of other things. Now the font dialog is going to allow the user to select the font style, size, color, whether it's going to have strikeout or underline. And I'm just going to cover the basics here. I'm going to go FontDialog, EX as new FontDialog And then you have to define if you want the color for the text to show up inside here, which I do. So I'm going to define that. So I'm going to say show color and mark that as true. And that's all I'm going to do for defining that object. And here I'm going to check what they selected. So I'm going to go FontDialog, and this is going to return an array. I'm just going to output the array. You can search through the array to get the information because you know how to work with arrays. So I'll just keep this simple. And here I'm just going to check once again that they clicked on OK. So I'm going to go System and Windows and Forms and Dialog Results. And then OK, just like we did previously. And so if that comes back as true, then I'm going to output the information. So I'll go text output, and we can call a font dialog. And like I said, I'm just going to put the font information, which is actually an array. I'm going to just put it on the screen here by converting it into a string. And new line. And then I'm going to do the same thing once again with the color that they selected. So throw that inside of there. And to get the color, we're going to go color instead. And I think I got everything there. Oh, you have to change this to EX. Don't want to forget that. Save it. And start it, and click update again. That's going to open up the font window. There you can see it's right there. I'm going to leave everything just set as default, or I can change this into purple, whatever. Click on OK, and you're going to see all of the font information pops back right there, as well as the color for the text. Alright, so there is a whole bunch of things that I missed in the previous parts of the tutorial. Hope you guys found that useful, and like always, please leave your questions and comments below. Otherwise, till next time.